Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about Final Cut Pro and NAB. I'm going to play some video clips for you and see if we get anybody to join us today. I'm going to take a minute or two. I'm going to send this link out so people can join us and so people can watch us on YouTube. So just give me 1 minute, please. Let's see here. Copy that. And copy that. All right, let me send this out a few places. I'll be 1 minute. So first we will put it on Final Cut Pro Radio Facebook page where I put most of my stuff. Let's see here. Actually, first I want to go here and make sure we are live. And we are indeed live. Okay. So the chat is available. If you guys want to chat, you can say something. I got some clips that I'm going to be playing from NAB, as well as just have a discussion about how the trip went for me. So let me just post this a few places. Oh, let me see. Copy. Oh, actually, I want to change that. Copy that. Okay. So if you guys ever want to follow along, the best place to follow is our Facebook group, Final Cut Pro Radio Facebook group. That's where most of our stuff will end up, most of the posting. You can also, of course, follow along on Twitter. I'm going to post to Twitter right now. Just getting started here. Let's see. Oh, that's not what I wanted. That is what I wanted. All righty. So like I said, I'm going to be playing some clips that I filmed while in NAB. I have a couple of 100 gigabytes of video clips. Some were shot with the GH5, which I'm talking to you right now on, and some were shot with the iPhone, with my iPhone. So you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat on the YouTube channel. If you want to join in this discussion, you can send me a message and I'll send you the link. So I started with when I got to Las Vegas. Well, before I got to Las Vegas, I got to the airport, BWI airport, and I have a lot of electronics with me. I have my GH5, I have a tripod, I have all kind of connecting cables, all kind of batteries and chargers, and I had them packed in my overhead suitcase, the one you put overhead. And when I got to BWI airport, they tagged that suitcase and completely disassembled it, took out everything, all my clothes, all the electronics, and then they gave it to me unpacked. They said, okay, you're fine. Gave me this, all my clothes and all the electronics completely unpacked, and I repacked them. It's not a big deal. The one strange thing that I have a Sling Studio, which is a live broadcasting hardware apparatus, and it looks kind of strange, and they asked me what that was, and I explained it to them. Everything else was normal. So I take my time. Like I went to the end of the line, end of the, conveyor belt, wherever that the security is, repacked everything back up, put it together, and went on my way. I changed that when I went back from Las Vegas back to BWI, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So besides all the equipment that I have, I bring my own coffee making setup, I grind coffee before I leave. I have a AeroPress, which is like a small press to make the coffee in the morning. And I have a stainless steel, what they call a pour over kettle. This is what it is. Pour over kettle. It's beautiful. It's got a spout, whole 9 yards. So I arrive on Sunday. I go down to the local CVS and I get half and half because I like half and half with my coffee. And everything is fine. I got bottled water as well because I use bottled water. I don't use the city water. So I get up in the morning. I got up early because I was still on East Coast time. I got up in the morning, got everything ready, got the coffee in the AeroPress, got my bottled water ready, poured it in the kettle. The kettle doesn't work. It doesn't light up. Boy, was I mad. I tried everything. I tried unplugging it, replugging it in, any kind of, flint or anything that got in the connections when you pushed the kettle down because it was electric kettle. Did not work. This was 4:30, 5 o'clock the first morning, Monday morning. Oh, I was so aggravated. So I put that aside and I said, now where am I going to find an electric kettle? So I figured out they might have one at the Walgreens, which was close by. So I went over to Walgreens and they had one. It wasn't a stainless steel. It was a big black plastic one, but it heated the water up. That's the main thing. So trekked down there, got that, brought that back up, and then I'm off and running. But that first stumble was rather aggravating considering the fact that I packed this thing up. I actually have 4 of these kettles, and I didn't know that one of them did not work. So that was Monday morning. So then I got the coffee, got dressed, showered, the whole 9 yards. They had I was staying, an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous shower. It was like green marble and a beautiful glass enclosure. So that was really, really nice to get up in the morning and take a shower in that beautiful shower. The whole room was really, really nice. It was a very nice room. So I jumped in, I called up LumaForge guys. They were staying at the same hotel. And I connected up with them down in the lobby, and we got coffee at Starbucks and breakfast, and we jumped in their van, got to the LumaForge suite, the Faster Together stage, actually, and which is all the way at the other end of NAB. So NAB is, as you guys, I'm sure you know, is quite large. It is extremely large event. 100 and some thousand people from what I understand. One of the amazing things, let's see if I have that. Yeah, it's right there. Was the size of the Black Magic booth. Let me pull that up and I'll show you. So the Black Magic booth is like a city block. Look at the size of this thing. And space at NAB, as you could well imagine, is at a premium. But look at the size of the Black Magic booth. So as you can imagine, that is at the one end of the South Hall lower floor. So LumaForge is all the way at the other end of that, all the way down to the other end is where the LumaForge suites were. And I really, really liked the way LumaForge had it set up this year. I thought that the rooms were excellent. As a matter of fact, I would say that the workflow suite was a very, very popular room to be in this year. And you'll see why in a minute. I'll play you some clips from that as well. You'll see why in a minute. Let me pull that up. So you get to, let me see if I can pull that up here. This is actually the faster together stage. I'll show you the workings of that just a little bit. I'm just going to play short clips. I'm not going to play really long clips because that's not what this podcast is about. So here's the LumaForge faster together. So that is the faster together stage itself. That was Sam introducing the kickoff events. And then we go to Next Door, which was very, very cool. This was the workflow suite. So if you see here, he has his back to you. Brad Olson was there. He has the changes radical in orange in the middle of the screen. To the left lower corner is Mark Bach. In the right upper corner is excuse me, Ronnie Cortens. There is Sven, the guy that does We Make Movies, or not We Make Movies. He's the edit guy on YouTube. Scott Simmons is there. Philip Hodgetts is there. Jeff is there from LumaForge. He was like the master control operator. There's Gergana. There's Sam. Matt Goddard came all the way from Australia. There's Ronnie there. There's Jeff Greenberg, of course. Scott Simmons once again. There's Gregory Clark. There's Michael Kamas, Steve Martin, Bill Davis, and I think that's Sam sitting with them. And there's Michael Cioni, who had I love his presentations. He had a great, great presentation. So what happened was typically you had, let me just finish playing this out. So the problem that I encountered, which we actually anticipated, was getting internet connection down there. I used my phone for most of it, but the phone would, I guess the networks would get unreliable. They would get overcrowded and become unreliable. I used up 20 gigabytes of data streaming live, but it would connect sometimes it wouldn't. Depends on how many people were actually there trying to log on to that. I was at the AT&T network, and it said I had 4 bars. It wasn't a problem. 4 bars LTE, but it wasn't a problem. But it did prove to be problematic. So let me pull up this one. This, of course, was one of the most popular events at the Faster Together stage. So LumaForge had 2 rooms, 2 private rooms. On the left-hand side was the Faster Together stage, and on the right-hand side, adjacent to it, was the workflow suite. The workflow suite was where people came and hung out. There were some customers there that were getting shown the jellyfish and the share station, but other people just came and just hung out there, and you talked to each other. You had lunch there if you wanted to have a place to sit down. It was a very, very cool place to have. I really, really liked that this year. But anyway, this is back over at the Faster Together stage. And this, of course, was one of the most popular. Let me see if I can get that. It's not letting me bring it up. What's going on here? Well, I'm trying to get this up. Bizarre. But anyway, Michael Cioni had a great presentation on 8K, doing 8K. And it's not letting me screen share. That's pretty strange. So he had a great presentation on doing 8K. And I'm sure Limit Forge is going to have that one out fairly quickly. He went through the whole workflow of having 8K with an iMac Pro, which is very, very cool. Let me see if I can get that up. That's working. That screen sharing is not working for some reason. Huh. Screen sharing, for some reason, stopped working. I'll try to bring that up in a second if I get a chance. So, yeah, so Michael Cione's presentation was as packed as you can imagine. And I have some of these videos up. I don't have Michael Cione's. I just had the little intro piece over at my YouTube channel, Richard Taylor, youtube.com/Richard Taylor TV. If you subscribe over there, I have a group of video clips that are titled, I think the playlist just says NAB 2018, something like that. So let me see if this is going to work. Not sure why it's not working, but it's not. Well, that's going to put a damper on things. All right, let me go over here. I'm going to go check one thing real quick. I want to invite some people over to join us. See if we can get some people to join us. So those of you who attended NAB this year, we got to see the first morning, Monday morning, was the Faster Together stage. Presenters are there all day. Most of them are Final Cut Pro related. Next door was the workflow suite. And then Monday night, we went to the FCP exchange, which was very cool. Apple presented there. Now, when we got there, we were told there was no filming. And let me see if I can find that. There we go. There was to be no filming, and there's a reason why there was no filming. It was not optimally set up for lighting and for audio for filming. So Apple did not want anything audio taped or filmed. I was allowed to take still frames. I took a still of the 2.5 million users at that event. So I don't know why all of a sudden I can't screen share. That's rather strange. Chat works. Screen share is not working. Camera's working. Screen share is not working. That is just really bizarre. I was planning on showing you clips, but if I can't get screen share to work, then that's not going to work. All right, let me see if I can send this link over to a couple of places on Facebook. If you guys want to join in, just let me know in the chat and I will send you the link. Actually, I'll just post it there now so you guys can. Let me see. I'll post it there. If you want to join in, you just click this link. You'll need a microphone, obviously. It's a Google Hangout. Let me get back over here. Post it over there. Say we are live. Google Hangout, a couple places. So anyway, we got to the FCP exchange, and there was a line going all the way down the hall. Very interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people there. So, oh, here we go. Now it's working again. It's rather bizarre. I don't think it's my mouse. No, it's not the mouse. It's just the screen sharing. For some reason, I was planning on playing these videos for you. Now I'm not going to be able to. It started okay. Oh, there we go. Let's try this. Here we go. So here we go. Here we go. This is the line for the FCP exchange. Here comes Steve Martin with his 360 camera. Look at this line, though. You can see these videos on my YouTube page if you want to just watch them full quality. This might be a little bit stuttery. I'm not sure. There's Wes Plate from Apple. Ah.
Hey, look, there I am.
Hold on a second, Brad. There you are.
They let me in.
Did they?
Yeah. I got to be in there. There's Oliver Peter.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was the line at the FCP exchange. So on right now we have Mr. Brad Olson, who was in line, and I told him they weren't going to let him in, but he got in anyway to the FCP exchange. Hey, Brad, what's up?
Oh, I'm really exhausted.
I'm sure you are.
Drove straight back from Vegas to Salt Lake yesterday, and my voice is gone because I was talking too much over those 3 days. Talking over loud crowds, and so yeah.
Did you take any airborne?
No.
You don't believe in that stuff? Some people do, some people don't. I take it all the time. What the heck? I don't. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. But it seems to me it does. So
get that vitamin C up so you don't
something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just, my voice is, I don't feel sick. It's just my voice is strained from talking too much. So here I am talking some more.
Well, you can do peace signs for us. So I guess after you presented at the Super Meet, that was more relaxing for you after that point, right?
Yeah, it was really fun to present there. And then afterwards I gotta, Wednesday I just gotta chill out and relax a bit more. I wasn't as anxious about having to get up in front of people and talk and worry that I was going to go over time. They didn't use the taser on me at the Faster Together stage, and Stephen Holfish didn't push me off stage at Super Meet, so it worked out.
That's a bonus.
Yeah. Although he went over time. Mike Horton wanted to kick him off the stage, so Steve Holfish, he went over time.
So did they, I know they videotaped at the Super Meet. Did they give you any idea when they might have those up? Typically it could come out in a month or 6 weeks or so.
Do they put the Super Meet videos up? I mean, I've seen a few from Boston and from
you're right,
LA, and I've seen it, and occasionally they've done some from Amsterdam when they've done the IBC, but I haven't seen very many hardly any from NAB.
Well, I wonder why they tape it then. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I can ask and see if I can have them put it up, or if they can send me it.
I wish I'd known that. I would have taped your whole thing with the GH5. I just presume I didn't want to, get in their way of putting their own videos up. But I presumed you're right. I don't remember specifically. That's strange. But anyway,
I don't know. Maybe I can request it or ask, for that footage, because I'd love to be able to put that up. It was fun to get up in front of everybody and tell them in a few minutes, what the story of the documentary was.
So let's watch your. I had the little clip of yours that I put up on YouTube. Let's watch that. I wanted to get the applause of the reaction of the audience. That's the main thing that I wanted to get, because they don't get that regardless. They're shooting the stage, but I was at the front of the stage and I turned around. So let's. Are
we going to be able to hear it?
I think so. You tell me.
I don't think we're hearing any of it.
You're not hearing any of it?
No.
Okay, let me switch my audio.
You tell me.
To, it says default speakers. Let me switch it to, no, I'm surprised. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought that people were listening and they could hear that. Most of the clips don't make any difference because there's just background noise. I didn't realize that they couldn't hear them. I wonder why. I have default speakers on.
It's not piping through your mic.
Let me try this. Tell me if this comes through.
What about all my sponsors? Not on my end. I can check the live feed. Okay, well, that must
not be. No, it must not be then.
Hey, there's me on the stage. It was fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how many people there. Probably about 500 or 600 people. Do you think were there?
Yeah.
Oh. What just happened? Huh. Apparently Richard Taylor is gone. And
sorry about that.
So I didn't realize I should have been hosting the radio show while you were gone.
What happened was I was closing Windows the QuickTime and I clicked on the darn window for the super.
I quickly sent a message. I'm like, what's going on? I didn't say anything, so there's a good chunk of me just sitting there.
Right. That's all right. So yeah, so I clicked on the Hangout window and it just closed it, of course, as you can imagine. So yes. Yeah. So anyway, that's a good thing I tested that. I'm not sure. I have to go back and watch the live stream, see if it had audio. But anyway, Brad did a great job. The applause was very loud. It wasn't like just half the people were, applauding. Everybody was applauding. So I'm sure you were glad to have that over with.
Now, I don't recall. Did you ever end up showing up at the LumaForge after party on Wednesday?
No, I did not, because there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is I didn't have a ride to and from, and I just didn't feel like spending $25 to $30 for rides and stuff. And
you never sent me a text that could have come and got you.
No,
actually, you know what? My car was full.
Yeah.
I had full cars on the way to that party, so I couldn't have. Unless we stuck someone in the trunk. You wouldn't have fit in the trunk, though. No,
I could have hung on to the roof. No, I didn't get there this year because I was extremely tired. Everybody was tired. And when I got back to my hotel room and I took a shower and I started relaxing, I said, I'm just going to stay here. So
yeah. I was just realizing that yesterday, and I thought, well, Richard wasn't there last night.
Yeah, Bill
never
called
texted me. He never said anything. Oh, okay, so somebody
called me late at night.
Somebody was thinking of you.
Yeah, it's okay. It's I was more than happy just to relax. I got a good night's sleep before I had to go to an airplane on LA to Las Vegas. So,
well, we didn't get kicked out of the suite, so that was the good news.
Well, that is good news. Did What was your highlights for the NAB?
Well, obviously doing the two presentations was a big deal, but I think I couldn't be more excited about ProRes RAW. Last week we got the announcement, and I thought that was really cool. But being able to talk to backstage at the Super Meet, I was able to talk to Jeremy Young of Atomos, and to see his enthusiasm one-on-one in person for what's happening there. And he was able to answer some of my questions, including how ProRes RAW is actually processed in Final Cut Pro 10, because I didn't know if it was, you got your RAW clip, brought it in, and it was de-bayered, or according to the white paper, de-mosaiced before you applied effects, or if it opened up the RAW and then de-bayered it afterwards. In other words, was it a true RAW workflow when you were coloring? And he said it's absolutely a true RAW workflow. He's like, there's no difference between taking the color balance. You have that manual white balance in Final Cut 10 now. So there's no difference between that and if you were adjusting on the camera. The only difference is that in Final Cuts they don't actually put a Kelvin, and they don't tell you what actual Kelvin it's at. But aside from that, it's in terms of how it's affecting the pixels, it's actually the same. And when I found out that, and that exposure is the same thing when you're using the color, if you're using the exposure in the color board or the color wheels, it's the same thing as if you were adjusting ISO or exposure in the camera, of course with more control.
Right.
And that just got me really excited, even more excited about it. And I think as you stop by the Blackmagic booth, and that's another exciting thing. You were really excited when we were reading off the specs of the Pocket 4K cinema camera to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just go over this real quick. Now, obviously it's 4K. It records to external SSD drives via USB-C. I don't know of any other camera sub couple $1,000s that does that. So that's a great idea. You don't have to buy expensive cards. You can just get a 2 terabyte SSD for $500-600, and you can record directly to that. That's a big deal. It records up to if you have the fast enough media cards, up to 12 bits, not just 10 bits, but actually 12 bits. It records some kind of RAW right now. I guess DMG RAW is what it records, probably. Mm-hmm. It has. What else? There's a couple of other features. Oh, it comes with a full version of Resolve.
Mm-hmm.
The full version, which is $300 by itself. It's $12.99, so it's $1,300. And there's a bunch of other features. The main thing I don't like about it doesn't have a flip screen. That's the main thing. And it does look kind of clunky, but we'll see when the real model comes out. The problem is it's not scheduled till September of this year, which means we probably won't see it till 2019 or maybe next NAB. It's hard to tell with Blackmagic because they sometimes project way into the future.
Yeah, it's true. They did just stick the screen on the back, which, the original cinema camera and the Pocket cinema camera, that was something people didn't love about the design. I think they're just trying to go for that more DSLR looking body. It's
right.
It's not as small as the original Pocket. In fact, people are making the joke that you can't actually fit in a Pocket. Exactly. So it's not a true Pocket camera. But I was impressed with what I saw. I think if you rigged it up, I think if you got maybe one of Blackmagic's or Small HDs or Atomos's 5-inch monitors, that would be a solution if you were worried about having some sort of flip screen. Well, you have now full, you can put that anywhere. You'd obviously want to rig that camera out a bit, or maybe you do just have a lens and have the camera and go out and get a few quick shots at events and things like that. I'm excited about it. I may end up buying one later this year when it's released. I haven't made a decision. I guess it all depends on how well Off the Track sells. And then we'll see. If it doesn't sell very well, then I won't end up with a Red Raven. I'll end up with a Blackmagic Pocket. But hey, either way.
So there's two other things that I find really attractive about the Pocket camera. It has XLR audio. I know it's only a mini XLR in, but the other end is a full XLR audio. What other camera in that price range has that? Nobody else. So
I mean,
it takes line in and mic in.
Camcorders might. You could probably find like a Canon or Sony camcorder, but that's not going to give you a large sensor and a lens mount and the quality that you're going to get out of, and definitely a ProRes.
Right. Well, the other factor is it's going to have to support ProRes RAW. That's one of the factors. When it doesn't right now, but that doesn't mean it won't. The other factor is it takes micro 4/3 lenses. I already have a complete kit for my GH5 and GH4, so I don't have to buy any lenses. They just automatically mount on there. So that's not.
And it's a full micro 4/3, so it's not the cropped sensor that we got with the original
GH4.
Pocket.
Yeah, the GH4
and the Pocket,
same thing.
And the Pocket had like a Super 16. It was really cropped.
And they had lousy audio. I remember that. Menus hidden in menu, and it didn't work very well. That's one of the reasons I didn't get the original, even though I was interested in it at the time. So what else did you see there? I mean, so the ProRes RAW is a big deal. The captions are a big deal for people who need captions. I mean, eventually everybody's going to need captions. But I think a bigger deal when we were talking I was talking to different people. The other thing was the share menu has changed. The roles are now respected in the share menu. You can turn roles on and off. Before, it was just in the timeline. It was just for playback. You turned a roll off, it's still exported. Now, in the share menu, you can actually turn the roll on and off on the share, which is a big deal.
Well, you know what's funny about that is when they very first came out with rolls, and I would turn them on and off, it was crazy that like when you could do that, it was crazy that when you export, it included that. Like that wasn't intuitive, that you had it off and you didn't hear it in the timeline. Right. And then you go to play back your video and you're like, I thought I turned that off.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, that was just temporarily muting it. And so you have to actually disable the clips. So it makes a lot more sense, especially as they've built out audio lanes and everything. It just makes more sense for that to behave like you would have in a traditional NLE turn off a track, like, turn off a roll. It should be the same thing.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm glad they did that. And I mean, there was I don't know, it's outside of Final Cut. I was mostly at the Faster Together stage, so I'm sure lots of people had other crazy announcements. I think not very many people were excited by the FS5 Mark II because they just said, hey, it's not really any different than the Mark I, so why would I pay extra money for that? I don't know what else. Maybe I was just missing it. I know Adobe had a bunch of announcements, and I know Blackmagic is integrating Fusion. It was interesting to watch Grant Petty's video live from the show floor, not just because the PA system kept interrupting him. I don't know if you've watched that.
No, I haven't watched it yet.
You can go on Blackmagic's site, and even he admitted, like, we didn't do any market research. We don't know how people are going to use this. We just want to empower people and give them every possible tool, in our product. So here's Fusion built into Resolve. And I think for colorists and visual effects artists, that's a really, that's something that they're very happy about. I mean, there is this line between what's color and what's visual effects, and what's, graphics and what's editing that sometimes gets blurred. So having that available might be good, but I think most editors would be intimidated by the Fusion and Fairlight pages, because they are full on complex. I mean, I'm sure they're simpler than firing up a nuke, but for an editor, they're full on complicated node based. In the case of Fusion, I wrap my head around the concept of nodes, but I just haven't. If I had a more pressing need to do visual effects, or if they were easier to do, I'd probably do more of them. But I try to keep my comps simple, and Final Cut and Motion have plenty of easy titles. that I
No,
can use.
absolutely. So I watched Tony Gallardo's Faster Together presentation on Fusion, and of course, it's all node based, which to a nonlinear editor is completely foreign. I understand how it
Well,
works.
well, I will say this. I would think a visual effects person that understands nodes would actually understand the magnetic timeline pretty well, because clip connections, even though it's not necessarily clip connections or an order of processes, at least that layout instead of tracks of having clips that are connected to each other, there's something familiar about that and nodes. I first got introduced to nodes, and I think they had nodes in Apple Color. Yes, they did. In Apple Color, they had nodes. And what made it easy in Apple Color for me to understand, or why it was easy to understand nodes in there, is because they had presets, preset effects that you could drag over in Apple Color,
Right.
and then it would show you the node tree. And so then it was, then it was like, oh, okay, so that's how you got to that result. You could kind of work backwards and figure it out. And then, of course, I studied up on Shake and other things back in the day. I didn't use Shake for anything, but I did play with it, a demo of it really quickly. But they were discontinuing it by the time I was looking at Shake.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see how people use it. I think there'll be independent filmmakers that'll be thrilled that they have a set of tools for $2.99. They can do everything to finish a film. I think Apple's approach is different. They don't want to put anything in there that they think is going to intimidate a new user, like just right in front of them. You have to like open panels and dig for the stuff that's more technical and complicated.
So at the FCP exchange, obviously Apple announced, they didn't announce anything. Everything was already pre-announced. They just talked about the 2.5 million seats. And I've talked to people over NAB who have clarified that 2.5 million seats means a license. So if you have a single license in an institution and there's 10 people using it, that's only one seat.
Or a family where the dad bought the computer and they've got like 2 or 3 kids and mom is using it.
Right. So that's one seat. That's not 10 seats. So that's how they're counting that.
Yeah, it'd be, well, in the 2 million, what I've been told about the 2 million users that Final Cut Studio or Final Cut Classic had was because if you remember that 2011 presentation, they had that number 2 million.
2 million, yeah.
In 2011, and it was across all versions of Final Cut, and B, they were trying to get an estimate of how many people out there were using it. So that didn't necessarily mean seats or legitimate licenses or purchases. That just meant we've done a poll and we think this is how many people are using it. So there's probably, I'd say, at least 2 to 3 times more people in the world using Final Cut today than were using Final Cut in 2011.
Exactly. So one of the things, they demoed the RAW, they demoed the captions, how that worked. This is the Final Cut Pro team at the FCP Exchange event. They also said, and as always, it's free for existing users. I don't ever recall them making a special announcement about that at an Apple event. So that was also interesting. Yeah,
that's true. I don't think they said that last year at all. I mean, it'd be funny. What struck me as funny about that, though, is it was a 10.4.1. Here's an incremental update, and as always, it's free. You'd think that they would have made that announcement on 10.1, 10.2, 10. I thought 10.1 would be an upgrade cost, and honestly, I would have paid $99 to get 10.1 and another $99 to get 10.2.
Not giving Apple. There's only one problem. You can't do updates in the App Store.
You could create.
You can't do update prices. You can't do update price. Oh, a new app, yeah, but you can't do upgrade prices.
You could do a new app. I thought they were figuring that out though.
They've been figuring it out for quite a while, because a lot of apps that I have, and people, what ScreenFlow does, and I follow this very closely once I realized what they were doing, they'll give a reduced price for 24 hours. when they
Mm.
have a new version coming out. So if you pay attention, and I always post it in Facebook groups when they do that, if you pay attention, you got 24 hours or plus or minus to get that discount price. And the discount price is like 60% off. So that's their upgrade. That's the way they do an upgrade for people. So
Right.
that's interesting. So anyway, so the FCP exchange, the Apple presentation was great as usual, but I really enjoyed the Despacito. Is that the name of that film? This 5 billion download film from YouTube.
Yeah, that's the music video from Puerto Rico.
Yeah. I really, really enjoyed watching those guys and listening to them talk. The producer, I guess, was a director. Was that who it was?
Yeah, they had the director and the editor up there.
And when you first saw that first view of the timeline, were you shocked like I was with all those stacks they had, the initial stacks?
That's one way to do it. It's kind of a there's some reasoning, I think, for them to done it that way, but at the same time, I would have tried to use more multicam clips and keep it a little more clean. And I've seen people
Right.
cut music videos with multicam clips with like 100 angles. There's actually a screenshot of one in Off the Tracks that was sent to me by a guy in Germany. I don't remember how to pronounce his name, so if he sees this, he's going to get mad at me. But it's Shashin or Shash. Anyway,
Right.
I met him over in Europe, but yeah, he did actually, I think it was a concert film or something, or music video. But the way they had laid it out was definitely. I mean, they had a workflow that worked for them, but I didn't feel like it was taking as much advantage of Final Cut as I like to.
Right.
But
and I agree.
They have 5 billion views, so
That's exactly what I said. I said, okay, they got 5 billion views, over 5 billion. I don't know if we should be criticizing them. However, I think they did it that way specifically because the artist was always in the room, and somehow it was easier visually for him to see all the things lined up one by one rather than in a multicam. I think that's one of the reasons. But anyway, when they got to the end, they were just in a single timeline when they got down to the final video. But it just was shocking. They had 10 lanes, something like that. It was a lot.
They had 19 video clips. There were 19 different performances stacked on top of each other.
Okay.
In the end, this was what was interesting is normally to organize the way they were, you would use keywords, but they actually used roles so that they could change the color of the clip. So then they could, and then they had to create smart collections for those roles rather than just have a keyword. So, an event browser, that doesn't make as much of a difference. I guess there's color in there, but it was when they got to the end, they could select a role and they could quickly highlight and see, what type of footage they were looking at, whether it was the dancer or the performance or or a scene. They just had different color codes for them.
So as people asked them, and they admitted they have no idea why they got the 5 billion views. They have no idea what caused it. I would say the dancer has something to do with that.
I think the dancer, and I think people like to listen. A lot of people use YouTube as a radio. Like they just play music videos, and if they like the song, then they'll listen to it over and over and over and over again. So I think it's a popular song. It'd be interesting to study, somehow like how many people are actually watching the music video versus how many people are just listening to the music.
Yeah.
In the background. I bet most people are listening to the song, and that the director made this point, that is it the song? Well, probably, but music these days has to be a visual medium as well in order to be popular. So there's people that would have never discovered that song had it not been on YouTube.
I never heard it before the other night. I never watched it or anything.
I think he said the artist did a song. They did and he did a music video for him 10 years ago that was called Gasolina. And if it's the song I'm thinking of, I guess I know you said 15 years ago. And if it's a song I'm thinking of, I remember hearing it everywhere on the streets of LA.
Okay.
So, I think he's an artist with a following in Latin America. Doesn't hurt.
Gotcha. So after we got the FCP exchange, which we want to thank Noah Cadner for, but I mean, Ripple Training was there. LumaForge also co-sponsored, and Future Media, they all co-sponsored that event. After we got done there, then we went to the FCP exchange.
Oh, yeah.
I have a short clip for that. Just it was so crowded in there. It's really difficult to do anything but eat and talk to people. There was no way that you could really do any effectively interviews or anything. You might see some people you recognize in that. Oh, there's the director right there from Despacito.
I didn't go up and say hi to him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a power cable out, and it's tangled with my headphones because I'm losing battery power. I think I've almost
I have that. I've had that happen a few times.
Yeah, the Guru Gathering was interesting. I was with a couple guys. One was Braden Storrs. Braden runs the Final Cut Pro 10. Well, he started the Final Cut Pro 10 Facebook group.
Exactly.
And I'm going to out him right now, but we were walking because that morning you and I had talked and you said, oh, it looks like you could walk there in about 10 minutes.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, that's great. So we were walking past the Renaissance and I said, hey, Braden, do you have it pulled up, like the address? And then he's like, oh, it looks like it's going to be a 35-minute walk. And I'm like, I don't want to walk for 35 minutes. Let's go get my car. And then he somehow pulled up another address because he was looking at the confirmation email for the event, and it still had the Hard Rock. So we ended up going on this half-hour, like, crazy journey. I'm like, I know it's not here. And we finally got to the place. So we got there late. I think all the meatballs were gone, but it was a fun little adventure that we went on. And
I didn't realize that because I was talking to people outside the FCP exchange with the exact same discussion. They were saying it's 10 or 15 minutes away. I said, no, it's not. It's supposed to be walking distance. They had the Hard Rock Cafe address on the invitation, apparently, on the confirmation email that they sent out from last year. I said, no, I know it's not there. I know for a fact it's just walking distance, plus or minus. So, yeah, we ended up walking there.
Yeah, and I think Steve Martin said something about, I don't know if the Hard Rock Cafe was just not there anymore or what the deal was.
No, it was an expense thing, I think. I'd have to say.
For whatever reason, I will say that nice thing about the Hard Rock is there was a lot of room, to move around and to get, have conversations. Where we were at this embassy place they just had us. I mean, we were in an open area, but they had us kind of caged off or roped off, and it just got like, it was just really, 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 really tight space. But it was fun to see everybody there and had some good conversations with some people who work for a certain fruit company that, I didn't have any conversations with them because those are all off the record.
Exactly.
But, it's fun to at least, go up and shake a hand of a developer or somebody and say, thanks for making this great software, and then talk their ear off as they just nod and say, okay. They don't tell you, they don't say anything to you.
Exactly.
Other than, I'm glad you like the software.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Or if you're mad, I guess maybe it's like they just get out of there. I don't know. I've never yelled at them. It would be interesting to see what they do in that case.
Well, I'm sure they've had some words. By the way, I just want to. I forgot to. I was going to do this at the opening. I completely forgot about this.
Okay.
Chris Fenwick had a family tragedy. He was at the Faster Together stage. He had a tragedy in his family and had to leave early. So please if you get a chance, reach out to Chris and just say whatever you'd like to say. He put out a short Final Cut Pro Grill talking about it. I haven't listened to it yet. It's probably be hard to listen to, but anyway, my heart goes out to Chris and his family. My prayers go out to him and his family. I forgot to mention that earlier. Just wanted to say that.
You know, we were saying that when NAB was all over, and I was talking to a couple friends, that it just wasn't the same after he left. You know, there was definitely, we noticed that there was a presence gone. So we definitely missed Chris, and yeah, we felt felt for him.
Absolutely. Chris is a friend of mine, and I've known him. As a matter of fact, I was on his show, interviewed him on his show originally. Yeah, I was on there twice, and one of the times I interviewed him on his own show. So anyway, reach out to Chris if you get a chance, or send him a note via whoever you contact him. So anyway, once we got done the Guru gathering, the next morning was back to Faster Together. And that was that the day? That was the day Chione was there. Was he there Tuesday? No, he was there Wednesday.
He was there Wednesday, yeah.
So what did you think about his presentation?
It was very entertaining.
I don't know if he has writers or not, but it was extremely entertaining. It was very entertaining. Yeah,
I'm sure he's seen enough YouTube comments on YouTube videos for, you know, specifically just to his presentations in the past, that he could anticipate, you know, what people might say. So he did a presentation and said, "Hey, look, I've been to the future, and you know, I've come 1 month, and I've come back, and I'm just going to address these comments that people have for me." You'll have to see it. It's really clever and really fun the way he did it. And you know, overall, like, he's pointing out that 8K today is no more difficult than standard definition was in the year 2001. And yet, you know, people don't want to move up or keep pushing it. And he's always trying to push us into the future, even if we're grumpy and complain about it. And, and, you know, I think for me, what I like is when you have these trailblazers, you can just, you can just enjoy the well-paved trail. That's what I like to do. Not be like totally left behind. I'm going to follow that trail, but I'm going to follow from a distance, because it's going to be a lot easier for me. Like today, HD is effortless.
Right.
4K is not difficult. 8K is difficult, but it's doable. And 8K in the next 2 or 3 years will not be difficult. So you might as well just, you know, pay attention and keep moving forward.
Well, one of the interesting thing was Michael showed mathematically why people who criticize 8K are wrong. He showed it mathematically, going from standard def all the way to 8K, and all the things people complain about, bandwidth, resolution, not being able to see it. He proved them mathematically why they were wrong. I really like that. So that'll be coming out, I'm sure, LumaForge. I thought they were going to rush that one out, but I'm sure everybody was burnt out.
Yeah, they partied too hard on Wednesday, so I'd give them till next week to get that one up.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think
sure that'll be
ones, yeah.
I'm sure that'll be the first one. Plus they'll probably want to run it by Michael and make sure that the color looks good and everything else, so we can.
That's true. That's
and, you know,
true.
I'm sure Michael's very, very picky on how it looks and sounds.
Right. So we were setting up. I just want to mention this. We were setting up. I was talking to Chris. Fenwick that morning. It was Tuesday morning. We were talking before the Faster Together stage went up, and they're playing back this music, and all of a sudden, I hear the theme, one of the songs from Twin Peaks. Come on, this, and I'm thinking, wow, who in the heck is playing? And then I said, oh, of course, Jeffrey Orthwine. We're both Twin Peaks fans. I turned around and said, Jeffrey, did you put that on? He goes, yeah, I put that on.
You know, it was interesting. Last year, Jeff, I think, had a bit of a beard and, you know, looked the part of an indie filmmaker. And this year he was his, I'm Mr. I run corporate events. And
oh, yeah.
He was just really cleaned up and clean shaven. And he was, I was glad I got to relax and not be in that room and be working really, really hard, because I'm sure that, and those are events, they just get stressful, but he seemed to run things pretty smoothly. And it just looked, that room just looked so great. I'm so happy for LumaForge. Last year you were kind of the ragtag pirate team, you know, getting in a small conference room at a hotel across the street. And that was fun. And it had there was a fun kind of atmosphere to it. But this year it was definitely all out, like done at a high level, and you know, just set a certain mood. And I think being right there next to the show floor brought more clients in for LumaForge. I think a lot more interest, and I'm sure they are starting to have to tell people, nope, we have too many clients already. Check with us in 6 months or a year, because there's just so many people lining up for that.
Here's a screenshot of the Faster Together stage. That's Chris actually was there at that point. And there's Jeffrey back there, Patrick Southern's back there, and Bill Davis. I'm not sure who the other person who was running sound. I'm not sure what his name is. But that's from the stage looking back at the control area.
Hey, there I am.
And this is side view. Everybody from the control. Beautiful blue lights. And then there's the stage itself with Sam up there doing the intro. Yeah, so absolutely. I hope they do exactly the same thing next year, even in the same rooms. They weren't hard to get to. They were completely, you could close the doors and be closed off. And
well, you know what I figured out? I didn't realize, because I've never been back that far, and I've even heard that the South Hall isn't always the open back that far, but this year it was.
I didn't know that.
And there's a big giant parking lot behind there, and an back entrance. You can't get badges, but if you already have your badge, then for the Tuesday and Wednesday, I was just able to, you know, park back there and get right in. So I actually didn't get in as many steps as I thought I would, but it's because I didn't park as far away.
Right.
and I just hung out at the, you know, Faster Together stage or in the LumaForge suite for most of it. But I had to leave early on Tuesday to prep for the super meet. So
right. So the other thing about it, not only the Faster Together stage, but the workflow suite itself was absolutely phenomenal. They had it was almost always packed. Let me just show a screenshot of that. It was almost always packed there. And the thing about it was better than last year. People would just come there and hang out. And I didn't go to the workflow suite last year until the party, but people would just come there and hang out. You have, in this picture, you have Scott Simmons there, Jeff Greenberg's there, Gregory Clark is there, Serena Catania is there. I see you in the background next to Michael Cioni up there.
Yeah, my buddy Zach is talking to Michael, and I must be talking to Laura Pursley, who's works for Light Iron.
Oh, there you go. There's me doing live streaming, which wasn't that effective down there.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. I'm sure. Oh, look, there's Sven and Matt Goddard. And
there's Sven and Matt Goddard came all the way from Australia. I want to say shout out to, and there's Jeffrey with his headphone and microphone set up, talking to people. There's Gergana walking by. So yeah, it was very, I really, really liked the workflow suite. It's incredible step ups that they did from last year. I mean, last year was great. It was last minute that they got involved, but this year, as far as Final Cut Pro goes, just hanging out with people, not all Final Cut Pro. Some people, you know, Scott Simmons he works with Premiere, Avid, Final Cut Pro, whatever. He was there. Michael Kamas was there. the guy that does 5 things. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
He always goes 5 things.
Well, plus you got to mention that every table had M&Ms.
Well,
So
absolutely. That's one of the biggest things.
yeah,
Steve Martin stopped by. You know, it was just a constant. All 3 days was constant flow of people in and out of that room. You could come there and bring your lunch if you wanted to sit down and just have a chat. You could, of course, bowls and bowls full of M&Ms. Of course.
Yep, it was delicious. I probably had too many M&Ms, but they knew that that's what would keep me in the room. So if they didn't want me there, then no M&Ms, but they were there.
It was a Brad trap.
It was for more than one reason.
Yeah, exactly. So we got out of the guru gathering. That was very nice. Thank you, Steve Martin. I always thank Steve for it. And he goes, "That's not me. It's all of us." He said, "You all are gurus, whatever." I saw him at the super meet and talked with him a bit. And then we got to the next day at the Faster Together stage in the workflow suite. And then we got to the super meet, which was very, very, once again, very nice. Mike Horton and Dan Berube are the 2 main people put that. Let me just play a quick clip. Now that I know that there's no audio, I'm not overly concerned about it. This is the vendor area out in the hall before we got into the actual stage area. There's LumaForge, of course. Roger Bolton was there with Core Melt. He was set up as well. Now I'll be curious if this audio comes through on the YouTube feed. I'm not sure.
Well, I was watching the YouTube feed when you finally got the screenshots working and there was no audio. So
okay, so that's interesting. That's
unless
interesting.
something's changed, I don't know. I don't know how that works.
No, that's well, I had problems. Well, you know, I've been testing this system out for a while. I never thought about the playback didn't have audio. I'm not sure how I would get that to I thought I could play the video clip and it would be video, but I'll keep that in mind going forward. There's no audio, or figure out a way to make the audio happen, one or the other.
Yeah. So yeah, the super meet was great. They had Jeremy from Atomos talking about ProRes RAW, so I think that was big for Apple. Aside from that, it was Adobe and Blackmagic. I didn't see any Avid this year there.
Not at the super meet. I didn't either.
HP did a presentation that I guess had some issues. I wasn't out there for it, but
they played back
they played back the wrong slides from what I can tell.
Yeah.
They played back his notes instead of the slides that were supposed to be playing. Not that Mike Horton wants us talking about mishaps, but I kind of thought it was funny because HP decided to rag on the Mac Pro and talk about how Deadpool burned through 14 Mac Pros, which is an old story.
Tell us the truth about that. What really happened with that?
So I think Peter Wiggins or somebody was the first one to get to the bottom of this, but on Deadpool, they kept burning out the GPUs on the Mac Pros, and since they were renting them, they just kept returning them to Apple, and they kept getting replacements instead of really figuring out what the problem was. My experience having a Mac Pro, 2013 Mac Pro, is that I don't actually use, at least not on longer videos, Premiere to compress things, because at least last year when I first was trying this, I would encode to H.264 through Premiere off of a 40-minute timeline, and my machine the fan would run hotter than it had ever run before. And I've done several features on Red Raw, encoding that. I've made DCPs to resolve. I've set my computer to export things for hours at a time, left them overnight. I've never had it overheat or burn out. But with Premiere, and the other thing was the power draw, because I have a battery backup that tells me the power draw, and the power draw just shot up to levels that I'd never seen when rendering or exporting with any other application that I've used. And I think that whatever, maybe it's changed now, but at least back before, the Adobe had not put in any safeguards in place for the Mac Pro. So in other words, Final Cut Pro or others might throttle or do some things to tweak the performance from keeping it getting too hot and drawing too much power. And they just didn't put those safeguards in place. And my solution is to export a native codec. So it's just like ProRes to ProRes from Premiere, and then use compressor. Backstage, I asked the first assistant editor of Deadpool about it. I told him that, and he said, yeah, that's what we ended up having to do, was use compressor to make our other deliverables instead of using Premiere. So I don't know. To me, is that a story about how the Mac failed?
No. If they were being honest, of course not. That's first off, to me, that was a little bit crude to put in a professional, presentation by a big company. I thought that was completely unnecessary. So I'm glad that you told me that story, that it actually was some kind of a safeguard in Premiere that was causing the burnouts, not the actual Mac Pros themselves.
The lack of a safeguard, yeah, and
lack of a safeguard, right?
So really, to me, it just comes off as these companies are jealous of Apple,
of course,
and if
exactly
and if you can,
what it is,
and if you can, if you can say, look, they're not so perfect after all, you should maybe consider HP. I mean, the truth is, Apple. That there's a reason why professionals have been making Hackintoshes or are looking at Windows, and some have switched over, and that's because Apple hasn't paid attention to that high-end hardware. This was a theory. I don't remember who told me this, so this is total hearsay gossip. But somebody was saying that their theory was that Johnny Ive and his team were too busy on the spaceship Apple Park campus, and that's why there just weren't resources dedicated towards the pro hardware. That may be true, I don't know, but for whatever reason, Apple wasn't building those high-end machines, and maybe when they finally got to looking at it again last year, they were like, "Oops."
Right.
So now we know they're coming back, and I feel like for those of us who've kind of ridden through the dark times of Apple not giving professionals love, we have stated very clearly that they are totally committed. ProRes RAW, I think, is positioned to totally shake up and change the post industry and the production industry, cameras to editing. I can't see how it won't, because we've never had a universal RAW codec before. I mean, you could argue Cinema DNG is that, but DNG was developed for stills and doesn't perform well for editing. It's great to capture in it, but you have to transcode it to something else. ProRes RAW is a capture codec that also can play back really well, and you could even, if you really wanted to, you could archive your movies. I probably wouldn't deliver to ProRes RAW for broadcast. I don't know if that infrastructure will change, but I absolutely think if you want to archive your movie in the highest quality possible, just keep it in ProRes RAW. The file size is not any bigger than regular ProRes, so why not?
So I've heard of a few bugs about 10.4.1. Once again, whenever something comes out, there's always a few bugs. I'm not sure if the one bug that we used to have, where you would delete a clip at the end, would delete clips all through the timeline, if that's come back, but somebody reported that it has. That would be really, that's not a good bug. I'm not saying that it has come back. I'm just saying I've seen a report that it came back. Have you seen that at all?
I saw some grumbling on Facebook. I normally do see some after a update. The thing is when they release software for any company, you haven't been able to test it out on a million different people's setups and with their plugins and with their whatever OS or whatever machine configuration they are on. So there's bound to be a few people reporting stuff. I don't know if that's widespread and that's happening to everybody. Right. I don't think it is, but I haven't played. I've been gone all week, so I haven't played with 10.4.1 at all.
Where have you been? Where have you been?
I met up with some friends of mine in Las Vegas, and we just cruised the strip.
Went gambling.
Went gambling, sure. Yeah, so I can't speak to that. You know, if I have some major issues, sure, but that's why, you know, if you're worried about stuff like that, then that's why they should take Richard Taylor's advice, which is zip the old version.
Absolutely.
You know, and save any of your important projects you're working on, like zip those as well, so that if you have a major issue, you can jump back to the previous version and keep going. I mean, it's especially as the software gets more complicated, it's probably more at risk of these little things popping up.
Well, there's always going to be bugs, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see. I don't know. I think sometimes people blow, like going up to 10.4 on my Mac Pro. I actually did a total system wipe before upgrading to 10.4 because I just know that I have no idea what random old plugins or things that I've got that I'm not using, you know, that are on there that and whatever else is going to cause some problems for me. So I like to be as clean as possible.
Yeah, that's why I was saying that. I was saying I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I just saw that somebody complaining about that one bug. I'm not sure how else that would happen. It's just a bug that we had for a while, and then it was fixed. I don't know if it snuck back in there or not.
Explain it.
What happens is you select a clip at the end of the timeline, and if you're zoomed in, it actually selects multiple clips in the timeline. So if you delete that one clip, it also deletes all the other clips that you can't see because you're zoomed in.
So if the one clip is filling your view.
Well, at least if you're not zoomed out so you see the entire timeline, you'll never know that clicking that one clip also selected unintentionally other clips. So if you delete that one clip, the other clips that were selected were also deleted.
I might try that. That sounds fun.
So once again, I don't know if that's a fact, but I just saw that somebody reported that happened with 10.4.1. It was a bug prior. We did have that bug prior in the prior version. I don't know if it was 10.2 or 10.3. I think it was 10.2 something. But I'm happy with it so far.
I never had that. I never had that happen. I'm in Final Cut pretty much every day.
Yeah.
But I've not seen that. I think if it happened to me, then I just edit undo, right? Like it's not.
Well, if you don't see, the problem is if you zoomed in, you don't know.
Right, but you zoom back out at some point,
if you
right?
Zoom, yeah. But then you're multiple steps past that. But anyway, that's just one thing that I saw reported. I was curious if anybody else saw it. People were commenting on it, so
I'll try it out.
So yeah, so then we got the super meet, and then we got
Final Cut's trying to help you, Richard. It's a feature. It knows you want to delete those clips. It's made that decision for you. The future of editing, AI, machine learning. It's fine.
Exactly. Speaking of that, Philip Hodges was in the workflow suite. Him and Gregory Clark from Lumberjack Systems were in the entire time. I got a demo from Philip about how that works. It is the slickest thing. You can do like a rough edit by selecting blocks of text, and it selects the corresponding video clips. I really, really like that when they get that, to the point where it's really smooth. And I think Roger Bolton from Cormel had something similar, but every time I tried to interview Roger, he had to go somewhere else. He had another appointment, so I have to do.
That's exactly why he's not in the documentary. I tried a couple times at the Creative Summit to interview him, and well, he may have had too much to drink one night, but other times he's like, "Oh, not right now, but later," and then it was,
later became permanent.
But Cormel is a sponsor of the doc, so we like Cormel.
Oh, absolutely, I love Roger. So also now you're not going to open this back up and start re-editing it because 10.4.1 came out, right?
Actually, I got some higher res clips of things that I had borrowed off of YouTube.
Okay.
They've given me the sources, so I'm going to do that. Won't change the movie. I don't know if you call that re-editing, but I am going to clean it up before we haven't announced that on here for people who weren't at the super meet.
Well, make the announcement. Go ahead.
I made a joke on stage but the announcement's not a joke, but I did announce when I was announcing it, I made the joke that we are going to have our premiere. Oh, excuse me. We're calling it the official debut of Off the Tracks movie, and it'll be on June 27th. It'll be in Los Angeles. It will be a Lacey Pug meeting, or Lassie Pug. How do you pronounce that?
Yeah, either way.
Los Angeles. Yeah. And so we're gonna do it there on June 27th. That'll be the first like official public screening event, and we're hoping to get out some really cool people from the film, and we're still in the early stages of planning exactly what that event will be, but I'm going to make sure it's awesome, and I want to release the movie for everybody at that time as well.
That's excellent. So people can find out more about that specifically at
offthetracksmovie.com.
At offthetracksmovie.com. You don't have brad.com, right?
No, I don't know what that is. That could be something. It's not me, though.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I remember when domain names first became popular, I could have gotten richardtaylor.com. But I said, nobody's going to want that. Then, of course, years later, you can't get it. I have .tv and .us and maybe .net or something, but I only use one. Plus, nowadays, it's like Facebook's more important, it seems like. Even though they're having problems, everybody goes to Facebook to find information, or Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, I might have to get on Twitter to start promoting the film more, or make somebody else be the official Twitter person for Off the Tracks, because I've never gotten on there. One social media outlet was enough, and then there was a bunch of them, and now I find a lot of people are on Twitter, but I'm not there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. Sometimes it's just too much. I mean, a lot of times on weekends, I won't touch social media for like the weekend, because during the week is plenty. So yeah, I am interested in Resolve, though. I mean, it's just becoming a behemoth. It's not in competition to Final Cut. It's in competition to Premiere more than anybody.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Especially at that price point, yeah.
I mean, they've pretty much taken the video apps side of Premiere. If you look at Premiere, Audition, and After Effects, and you kind of bundle them all into one application, you'd get something like Resolve. Although I think Resolve has has a more modern timeline, even though it's not a magnetic timeline. And they're finally, I think they finally got Fairlight and 14 seem very bare bones to me, and now it seems like they're adding plugins and functionality, and it'd be interesting to see how that comes along. They have a little ADR tool that is how when I do ADR or voiceover in Final Cut, I'll make to-do markers and jump down them, and then I use the voiceover tool, and they've kind of built something that looks similar to how I do my workflow, but it is an actual like panel for doing ADR, and you can write out the lines and it'll jump to that spot in the timeline, and you can record and it'll save the takes. So, and you can rate the takes right then in there. So that's clever. It'll be fascinating for me to see if, like, I really think they're ultimately gunning for Hollywood, but it'd be fascinating to see if it takes off there. Independent filmmakers, like I said before, I think they'll use it to its full potential, but I don't know what's going to happen in Hollywood because I wonder if there's going to be a tipping point where Hollywood changes, or if they're just going to stick on Avid even if the company goes out of business or is sold off, if they just stay on Media Composer because they know it. I don't know.
I think it'll eventually change over to something. I mean, DaVinci Resolve, people use that in Hollywood to color right now, so they're already in there, right?
Yeah, they're in there, but the thing that my experience in talking to people who work in LA, and this again, I haven't personally gone out there and worked in that industry. I'm much more a do-it-yourselfer, but right. Talking to those people who've either worked out there and come back to Utah, or people that are visiting, or just people I interact with at events like NAB, it seems like so much of the post process is compartmentalized. You know, there's a whole different sound team, a whole different editorial team. They're physically in different places, a whole different editorial team and visual effects team, and they don't really directly talk to each other. You have post supervisors and post coordinators and, you know, directors from different departments that occasionally kind of communicate, but they all sort of have their own. It's weird. It's just like a bunch of, you know, chickens running around with their own minds. So getting them to corralling them and to getting them to be on the same page, I think, is pretty difficult. And so just because colorists use it doesn't mean that an editor is going to be, you know, exposed to it, because
that's a good point.
An editor's just handing it, you know, their assistant editor's prepping stuff. The lab is pulling everything, and then it goes to some other department in another building to some person you may never even talk to in Hollywood. So,
right.
This going to post finishing. Okay. Like the only time they talk is if there's problems, but they're not like sitting down at lunch together and saying, hey, have you checked out Resolve? Maybe you should edit with it. So that doesn't, that's not a conducive environment for exploration and being exposed to things. You're insular. You're just in your little edit room, and that's your world.
I agree with that. You're probably 100% correct. However, the fact is that it's there. They don't have to buy a license. They don't have to go out of their way. It's already installed. So somebody, if Resolve gets popular, it's already there. It's already physically on the computers. You know,
well,
so
you can shove some water in front of a horse, but you can't make them drink it, right? It's like they're not even being led to the water. The water's right there, but like forcing them to drink it is the question. Will they do it?
I meant more from the Trojan horse aspect.
Oh yeah,
the way Apple did it with like the iPods and the iTunes stores and stuff, and people, you know, they made iTunes and the iPods work on Windows, and people were saying, "What, are you crazy?" No, not crazy at all. It's a Trojan horse effect.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember in 2006, there was a number of friends and people who'd say, "Well, I have to get a MacBook or I have to get an iMac because I have an iPod."
Right.
Or, or later as I have an iPhone. So I have to get, and so it was like, well, that's kind of funny because you're buying the more expensive thing, not as if it was an accessory.
Exactly.
You know? Like,
exactly.
But yeah, I honestly, I would love for Resolve to make inroads in Hollywood because, the magnetic timeline and Final Cut might be too strange to them. But if Resolve made inroads, the fact that at least on the picture side, Final Cut talks and Resolve talk to each other really well, that means that there's a fluid workflow that can be exploited in going from Final Cut to Resolve, and then individual editors can choose Final Cut, and finishing houses and other editorial departments don't have to stress as much. There's not that kind of inroad between Final Cut and Avid. You can't take a project from Final Cut like directly into Avid, and even passing that through Resolve is going to be a really big nightmare with lots of problems. But I've handed off several feature films to be colored in Resolve without any real issues. The audio has had some issues, but I imagine that they could continue to work that stuff out.
Yep. So one of the things I wish the Final Cut Pro team and the Apple presentation team would do at one of these events is talk a little bit about Logic. Because I've never seen anybody from the Pro Apps team demo Logic at one of these events or even talk about it. I'd like to see a little more, camaraderie.
That would have been. Was there no Faster Together presentation about Logic?
Somebody did. I'm talking about the Apple team.
Right. I'm just trying to think. Like that's something Sam has brought up to even on I think your radio show.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Sam has. Lumaforge has. I just like the Apple team, since it is a Pro Apps team, and since there's only two, there's Motion and Compressor, but two main Pro Apps left, I'd like to see them perhaps just demo something about Logic or round tripping or something at one of these presentations, because audio is very important, and Logic Pro 10 is an excellent a digital audio workstation. Even though it's made for music, I use it for dialogue editing all the time. So,
yeah, my only hang up with the Resolve to Logic workflow is the inability to update XMLs.
right. Round tripping. Absolutely.
So yeah, well, not just round tripping, but actually, you know, if I make a picture change in Final Cut, I want to be able to update that in my Logic project and not have to do change list or send it over a movie and have to resync it, but just click some sort of like sync XML or update XML and have Logic just make all the changes, timing changes.
Well, you'd have to just export another XML. That's the way you'd have to do that right now.
Right, but
that would
if
work.
I export if I update, if I send another XML, and I've already been working on the mix in Logic, would it be able to update the timing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't round trip back to Final Cut. So if you make changes in Logic, it doesn't round trip back to Final Cut. You had to just, from what I understand, from what I think I talked to Sam, it doesn't go back.
Right, right. Let me back up a little bit. What I'm saying is you take an XML out of Final Cut, you bring it into Logic, and then let's say you decide to make some edit changes, but whoever's working in Logic is mixing and editing there in Logic, and so then you make some changes to the picture in Final Cut. There's not really a way to reflect those changes in Logic, like by just sending another XML and having it update your Logic project.
No, it doesn't update it. It would be a new, brand new project. No, absolutely.
A brand new project. Maybe you could copy and paste over some effects and stuff, but I don't even know if that'll work. So what I don't know. It's definitely, if you can picture lock and not go back and make a bunch of changes, then just like you would in other post audio workflows, then I think Logic is really great. But why I want to see more built-in audio tools in Final Cut is because I want to be able to just, I mean, there's a philosophy difference there, which is you're just creating, you're being creative. You're not your workflow is not necessarily a rigid order of processes. First, I import my footage, then I edit my footage, then I add titles, then I do color, then I do audio.
Sure.
The way a Final Cut is designed is that you just like, oh, I want to clean up this audio now, even though you haven't like edited the rest of it, or so it creates a more fluid experience because it's just as you're working, you're being creative and you're catching things. And if they had more audio built in, then you would be like more audio functionality than you'd be able to do there. That being said, Logic's fantastic, and if you've got a larger team and you've got a certain schedule and you're doing a handover, I think for the independent filmmaker who wants to take their film to the next level, you got to send it to a dedicated audio workstation.
Right. So when I'm doing video, I typically do not send my audio out to Logic because it's not necessary. It's if as long as it's, if it's like half a dozen audio tracks or less, it's no big deal. But if I have 24 tracks or 32 tracks of all kinds of stuff, I'd send it out to Logic. Or if it's a real long format, I'll send it out to Logic if I'm adjusting the audio because it's just easier for me. Or if it's real complex or very important, I will send it to Logic and round trip it back to Final Cut. But normally I don't need to do that. Final Cut definitely needs more audio sophistication, including a mixer of whatever the way they're going to do that. They need that, in my opinion. The rolls work okay up to a certain point, but I don't like jumping in and out of compound clips to apply an effect to an entire roll. It's just, jumping in and out of things, like jumping back and forth across timelines, the same thing. Speaking of that, so it was at the Super Meet. Was it Resolve or Premiere? I think it was Resolve, where it had one timeline over top of another.
Yep, Resolve has that stack.
I love that. I would really like Final Cut to have that. And just drag stuff from one down to the other, have them both exposed at the same time.
Well, and it'd be nice too if there could be some sort of like, how in captions you have like the little errors pop up.
Right.
It'd be nice to have to be able to have two timelines, especially because we can, in Final Cut, you can take a timeline as a 10.3 and put it on a separate monitor. So stacking 2 timelines on an entire monitor, you have the room to do that. On a single monitor, it might be a little more claustrophobic, but on a second monitor, you have the room to do that. And then if you could even compare, like run some sort of comparison between the timelines, and then if you had 2 versions of an edit or 2 editors working on the same timeline or something, or the same project, if it could compare the 2, and then you could resolve differences. Like, I like it from this edit, I like it, or this version, Brad's cut here, Richard's cut there, jump back and forth, and really quickly just conform and create kind of a new project that is the more finalized version, and then keep moving from there. That'd be great. So yeah, not just for dragging and dropping, which is awesome. It'd be great to just select stuff out of one, because I do it all the time. I am always going from one timeline, especially making trailers for Off the Tracks.
Sure.
I'll pull up, the full project, because I don't want to just cut it from a baked-in video file.
Right,
so
exactly.
Copy and paste the original clips. Well, if I could have an empty timeline below, and I could have my project up here, and I could just, select it and copy and paste, or drag even into the other one. It'd just be a really fast way to assemble previews and trailers and right now we've just got those little arrow things on either side, and sometimes navigating those is kind of confusing. And one really confusing thing that'll happen to me all the time is if I have to jump into like a compound clip or something, that for a graphic that I've made or something like that, and then I jump back out, and then I think, oh, I need to go back to that other timeline, and I forgot that to the right there's a compound clip, not that timeline anymore.
Right.
So there's another feature thing, which I'm sure you've already brought up before, which is being able to even see into and edit compound clips without having to open another timeline. Just expand it like we expand audio channels.
Absolutely. Right in the timeline. I don't like jumping back and forth. I just don't like it. It's not only inefficient to me. I know you can click on the little arrow and you can see which one you want, but I don't know if it's before. I don't know if it's after. Sometimes the timelines will disappear in that hierarchy. They're just gone. I did something and they're not there anymore. So
you should take this little bit that we just talked about and edit it, and then go to the Apple forum or whatever, and just send a link in the feedback forum, or email your buddy Steve Bays or something. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I got his personal email address. So I'll give him a call.
His personal address too, huh?
Yeah, personal email address.
Right.
When I first met Steve Bays, which was 2 Creative Summits ago, when they introduced 10.3 that morning, and they had the monitors, they had the edit suites with the new MacBook Pro, and I walked in and he was in there, and I said, my name's Richard Taylor. He goes, huh, your reputation precedes you.
Well, I'm sure they've looked at your long list, and I'm sure 99 of them, they're like, well, maybe, but not the way you're describing, because they're Apple.
Of course.
They're Apple, they just do it their way.
Well, what people don't realize is I've had that list up since Final Cut version 5. It's nothing to do with 10. I started it a long time ago with version 5, but I don't even remember why I did start it, but I had a list of like 50 things or something with version 5. So I figure it's, you squeaky wheel gets the grease. You can send emails in, which I do. You can do the feedback, which I also do. But I think sometimes having it out there is a nice reference when you want to. Well, we're talking about FCPX.tv. There's a list on there of things. I haven't updated it recently, but I will. Anything else, Brad, about NAB?
I need to catch up on sleep.
Absolutely. I felt great waking up this morning in my own bed. I was just the most fantastic, and I had my pour over pot, which I talked about at the beginning of the episode. I brought one with me to LA, and I got up the first morning, and it didn't work.
Oh no!
Oh, it was aggravating. I had to go to CVS, or I went across the street to Walgreens to buy another one with somebody. Not this one, but they had a plastic one across the street. But at 5 o'clock in the morning, I just don't feel like I wanted my coffee before I even see the public. So
Yeah, this was my first morning waking up in my own bed, but I was having a really wonderful dream where I was laying on the beach and I was looking up at a blue sky, and then all of a sudden I could hear my daughter from the other room saying, "Daddy, Daddy, it's morning time. Let me out." She
Let her out.
her door was closed. She can get out, but she said, "Let me out." I'm like, I want to go back to that dream. So,
Absolutely. I love when you're having a good dream and you will get woken up and you want to go back, but it doesn't work that way.
no.
So we had a comment in the YouTube chat. It says, "Great discussion, guys. Now that Resolve 15 has Fusion built in, do you see Apple doing something similar, adding the complete motion app to Final Cut Pro?"
No.
I don't think so. I don't think that.
I think we'll, because of 360, I think we'll see, I don't know when, I have no idea, but I would like to see tracking built into Final Cut and some, because we already have custom masks, shapes, and we can keyframe those and everything. So I think if we can get some tracking built in, that'll be great. And then we'll probably see more improvements. But the way I think Apple looks at the application is they don't want anything that will intimidate a new user. And so far, I don't think we've really cracked the code with motion graphics, and definitely not with visual effects, where it's as easy as editing is in Final Cut. And so until it's simple, there's a way to make it simpler like they have with editing and organization, I don't see that stuff coming in. Apple, I mean, Blackmagic's just putting it in there because they just want to give you everything, and Apple's like very picky about what they put in there. They are, I think the difference is if you were doing some sort of interior design and somebody just said, "I want everything," that's what Adobe and Blackmagic are going to do. Adobe putting them in different rooms and Blackmagic shoving it all in the same room.
Right.
But Apple is like, well, does that balance? Does that fit? Does that look right next to that window? Do we have to have it? Is there a simpler way of doing it? And that type of thinking, what is that that phrase of if I had longer, I would have written a shorter letter.
Right. If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter.
Yeah, if I had more time, I'd written a shorter letter. That's Apple about Final Cut, and just slapping full functionality of motion in, that's way too much for Final Cut.
I agree. However, remember now they have West Plate. So the idea is they can do a stronger link of send to motion and have it. Remember when in version 7, you could bring a motion project into the timeline and you could right click on it and said, send to motion, and you go to motion, it update it, and it would update in the timeline. I would love that functionality.
Wes has been there for a year, and he already wrote that as a standalone application, and it hasn't been that high on the priority. Hopefully we get it, but
I mean, even like the motion,
everyone assumed, oh my goodness, Wes is there. When they come out with the new version, it's going to have that, and it still hasn't gotten it.
Even for example, even if you have a motion, if you drag a motion title into the timeline, you can't right click on it and update it.
No.
That's what I like. That's what I mean. Even like a title, if a parameter was
because you can open in motion from the browser,
right,
where it is, but you can't open it from the timeline. No,
that's what I'm saying. For example, when I use a title, sometimes there's a parameter that's not there that I want, so I have to go back into motion, add the parameter, republish it to Final Cut, and then add it back to the timeline. I'd like, if I have a nice title in there, to right click, send to motion or update to motion, do my changes, and have it save in the timeline. And the other thing is, what's going on with the effects browser after all these years that you can't drag and drop and organize titles and effects and stuff directly in the browser?
It's interesting. Did you read, this is sort of related, but did you read Stephen Holfish's Art of the Cut with Ben Mercer?
I did not.
You should look that up. In fact, I got to talk to Steve Holfish a little bit backstage at the Super Meet, and I am proud to say that the reason why he tracked down Ben Mercer is because I mentioned it to him on Facebook. So it's a good article. And anyway, what Ben brought up was that he misses the ability to reorganize clips or move clips around in the bins. That he used to do that in Final Cut 7. There was ways he would kind of pre-build an edit, or he would like move some up above others, you know, to indicate these are selects. Obviously,
Sure.
there's other ways to do that, but I thought, man, it would be kind of nice to have a custom thumbnail in the thumbnail view, have the custom ability to rearrange your clips within a keyword collection or smart collection or an event. I think because there's so much automatic stuff going on that would break really quickly. But so you kind of have to pick and choose. But
Yeah.
it was an interesting thought, like a kind of pre-magnetic timeline before putting it in the magnetic timeline. That was interesting. To me, it's like, well, it's not that hard to just create a project and drag the clips in and organize them that way. And then if you want to copy and paste those somewhere else, great. But there's a lot of ways to organize, and effects being able to do that, it makes sense. But
yeah, well, when I interviewed Thomas Grove Carter on Final Cut Pro Radio, one of the things he wanted was a second level of favoriting, not just one level, but a second level of favoriting. So you could have favorite and maybe the favorites. I'd like to see that as well.
Or just like ratings, you know, for ranges. So it's not just favorite and reject, but you know, in Aperture, you had like the little stars. I think in Photo Stills has that. So you could say this is a 4-star clip, a 5-star clip, a 2-star clip. Yeah, there's ways there's things that can be done. You gotta, again, this is us like going into the living room and saying, you know, can you add this? Can you add that? Can you put this thing on the wall? Can you bolt that on? Why can't you put this there? And they have to stop and fight against that urge to put everything, because that keeps the app easy to understand and running smoothly.
Well, however, the Final Cut Pro team is not staying still. They're not just standing still and resting on their laurels.
They're adding stuff. They're just taking their sweet time thinking about how to add it.
Well, I have one suggestion. This is not to do with the Final Cut Pro team. I don't think we need Johnny Ive designing the new MacBook, the new Mac Pro. I think we saw his effect on the last version. I think we just need somebody else designing the Mac Pro. The pros want power. They want power and stuff. The iPhone, yes, absolutely. The MacBook Pros, as far as the design, yes. The Mac Pro, no, we don't need Johnny Ives in there. Just make it powerful, make it upgradable, make it modular, like you said you would.
Well, the good news is I don't know exactly how Johnny Ive will be involved in the Mac Pro, but we now know that officially that there's a pro workflow team.
Yes.
That is in the field working on real world projects, and they are feeding that information back to Apple and helping them design both the software and the hardware to work together for real world pros. And
yes.
And that I think that bodes well I'm sure we'll get the machine that the rest of us are happy with. If not, we'll figure out who's on that pro workflow team and ask them what's wrong with them. But
absolutely.
But yeah, Johnny Ive's design is beautiful, but you got to have the most beautiful thing is when form meets function. And in the case of the 2013 Mac Pro, it didn't check the boxes for everybody, and that's a hard thing to do. But for everybody in the pro world, it works for me. But would I have liked a modular Mac Pro in 2013? Absolutely.
Absolutely. I bought Mac Pros up to the last 2013. I had a G5 Mac Pro, or what Power Mac it was called at the time, then the Intel version. I have 2 of them downstairs. They are beautiful, heavy duty, upgradable, easy to service, fantastic pro machines. I know it's not going to be that big, but boy, something like that again, I doubt if it'll be round. I really doubt that the new Mac Pro, I would be really surprised if it was round again. Number one, because people call it a trash can. And number 2 is it doesn't have to be round. I mean, that's the Johnny Ive effect, I think. I don't have any, absolute knowledge of that, but it seems like that's the Johnny Ive effect. We want something powerful and upgradable and modular like you promised. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. I think the iMac Pro is really the replacement for the 2013 Mac Pro for those people who want something like that. Plus, it comes with the screen, and I actually ended up buying, even though they're a bit overpriced. I bought the iMac Pro's keyboard and trackpad because they released those, and it looks really good next to a 2013 Mac Pro.
Well, that's true. They're both the dark gray. Yeah.
I couldn't afford an iMac Pro, but I wanted to feel like I made some sort of upgrade. I realized doing my taxes that I didn't buy any new Mac hardware, computer hardware in 2017. So I just thought, I just got to have something to, make my office feel like something's new. And when they had that, I'm like, that's the thing. I'm just going to buy those.
There you go.
I really like them. But yeah, well, the future is looking good, I think, for Apple and creative professionals. And some of us, most of us, I think, were patient enough for that. And it doesn't hurt that we just never really liked Windows in the first place. So
no, that would be torture for me. If I had to, on Windows, that would be torture. But anyway, so I want to specifically thank Noah Cadner, FCP Works, FCP Exchange, Steve Martin for the Final Cut Pro Guru Gathering, and of course LumaForge, SuperMeet as well, Mike Horton and Dan Berube, but in LumaForge especially, who had 3 days of fantastic presentations in one room, and the next room was a great meeting place for post-professionals to gather, chill out, talk to each other, eat M&Ms.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see any. Is it blue ones or green ones that are rare?
The
rock stars always ask for them.
Green ones are definitely not rare. I think they're both common.
Okay.
It's the rare one used to be that. Did they have like a tan M&M that was like kind of a rare one? I don't know.
Well, rock stars used to request the color that was very rare or non-existent in their contract, in their rider for their dressing rooms. That's what I remember.
That's just to make sure that the people actually read the
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. So especially the LumaForge, I want to thank them. Hopefully they just do the exact same thing next year. It was just like near perfection this year. It was absolutely great.
I love all of that stuff. I loved all of those events, and I think that all of those people you mentioned did a fantastic job and should be very proud.
Yep. All right, we're going to sign off here. We've had enough Final Cut Pro chat. My head is full of NAB and Final Cut Pro, as yours is. I'm glad you joined us, Brad.
Glad to be here.
Off the track. What's the website again?
Offthetracksmovie.com.
That's where you can keep track of what's going on with the latest on Off the Tracks Movie, which is going to debut on June 27th in LA at the LACPUG event.
That's correct.
And how long is it going to be?
How long is the movie going to be?
Yeah.
77 minutes.
And you're not going to change that. No more editing.
Well, no, we're done.
Okay.
It's not focused on features, so it's focused on ideas. So I think we're safe. We don't have people keep asking me, "Are you going to update it now that closed captions in there?" No.
You're not closed caption, but the fact that they did update a point release, which is what I was thinking they were going to do. So very interesting. You can't ever keep track of Apple. When you think you got them figured out, they just change just for the heck of it.
Yep.
Now I do want to. I've talked to Jeff Greenberg before we leave. And he's going to tell me when there's a creative summit as soon as he finds out. So we'll know something will happen at Final Cut Pro at that point. A demo, pre-release, whatever.
10.5. I don't know.
Maybe. I think it's a little too early for that. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right, Brad. I'm going to sign off.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
a lot for dropping by. We'll talk to you certainly again in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.